The massive council chamber fell silent as Admiral Zixthor walked to the center of the room. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he activated the holographic projector. The alien leader's yellow eyes scanned the assembled delegates from 47 different worlds. "Council members," he began, his voice carrying across the vast space. "We have a problem." The hologram flickered to life, showing the blue and green marble that was Earth. Then the image zoomed in, focusing on the space around the human homeworld. Hundreds of metal structures floated in orbit, connected by streams of light and energy. 3 months ago, we welcomed humanity into our galactic community. Admiral Zixthor continued. We gave them our friendship. We gave them our technology. We gave them our ship designs. He paused, letting his words sink in. They were supposed to build ships exactly like ours. A murmur ran through the crowd. Delegate Krishan from the mineral-rich worlds of Altair leaned forward in her crystalline chair. What exactly are you saying, Admiral? The hologram changed, showing detailed scans of human ships under construction. The vessels looked wrong somehow. They were thicker than they should be. Strange bulges covered their hulls. Extra engines sprouted from places where engines had no business being. The humans, Admiral Zixthor said slowly, are not following our plans. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching Earth grow smaller through the main view screen. This was humanity's first official diplomatic mission to the Federation capital world of Centaura Prime. Everything had to go perfectly. Status report, Jake called out. Lieutenant Sarah Kim looked up from her station. All systems running smooth, Captain. We should reach the jump point in 6 hours. Jake nodded. The Liberty was built using Federation blueprints exactly as specified. It was a good ship, reliable and efficient. But as he looked at the data flowing across his screens, Jake couldn't help but think about the other ships being built back home. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez wiped sweat from her forehead as she climbed through the maintenance tunnel. The UES Defiance was nearly complete, and she wanted to check every system personally. This ship was special. This ship was different. Hand me that plasma coupling, she called to her assistant, Tony. The young engineer passed her the component, and Lisa carefully installed it into the backup power grid. Doc, Tony said, isn't this the backup to the backup system? Lisa grinned. That's right, and tomorrow we install the backup to the backup to the backup system. Tony looked confused. But the Federation designs don't call for that many redundant systems. The Federation designs, Lisa said, were made by people who never had to fix a broken ship while getting shot at in deep space. We humans know better. She connected the final cable and activated her scanner. The readings made her smile. The Defiance's power output was already 30% higher than the Federation specifications, and they weren't even finished yet. Back in the council chamber, the delegates were getting louder. Councillor Velteran, a tall being with blue skin and silver hair, stood up from his seat. Admiral Zixthor, he said. Surely you're overreacting. The humans are new to space technology. They probably just made some mistakes. Admiral Zixthor's expression grew grim. These are not mistakes. The hologram zoomed in on one of the human ships. Look at this power core. It should produce 10,000 units of energy. The human version produces 15,000 units. That's impossible, declared scientist Mordak from the research station at Wolf 359. Our designs are perfect. They cannot be improved. And yet, Admiral Zixthor said, the humans have improved them. Look at these hull modifications. Extra armor plating, additional weapon mounts, redundant life support systems. He paused. And these energy readings don't make sense. According to our physics, ships like this should tear themselves apart. Admiral Carl Thompson sat in his office, overlooking the orbital shipyards. Through the massive windows, he could see dozens of ships in various stages of construction. The sight filled him with pride and worry in equal measure. His aide, Commander Kelly Brooks, entered carrying a data pad. Sir, we just received another message from the Federation Council. They want to inspect our shipbuilding facilities. Carl took the pad and read through the formal language. They're worried, he said finally. Should they be? Kelly asked. Carl looked back out at the shipyards. The UES Defiance hung in the center of the construction bay, nearly complete. Even from this distance he could see how different it looked. From the original Federation design, where the alien ships were smooth and graceful, human ships looked like they were built for war. Kelly, he said, what's the first rule of human engineering? She smiled. If it's not broken, fix it anyway. And the second rule? If you can't fix it, hit it with a bigger hammer. Exactly, Carl said. The Federation gave us their designs and we thanked them. But we've been building ships for war since before we could fly. They've been building ships for peace for 1,000 years. Back on the Liberty, Captain Morrison received an encrypted message from Earth. As he read it, his face grew serious. The message was from Admiral Thompson, warning him that the Federation was asking questions about human ship construction. Lieutenant Kim, Jake called out, send a message back to Earth. Tell them everything is going according to plan. Yes, sir, Sarah replied. Should I mention that we're being followed? Jake looked at the sensor display. 3 Federation ships had been trailing them since they left Earth orbit, trying to be sneaky about it. No need to mention that. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Dr. Rodriguez finished her inspection of the Defiance and climbed down to the main engineering deck. The ship's fusion plasma hybrid reactor hummed quietly in the center of the room. It was her proudest achievement, a power source that combined Federation antimatter technology with human fusion engineering. Tony, she called out, fire up the reactor for a test run. All the way up? He asked. All the way up. The reactor's hum grew louder as power flowed through the ship's systems. Lisa watched the readouts with satisfaction. The Defiance was producing more energy than any ship its size had a right to. More importantly, it was producing that energy safely and efficiently. Doc, Tony said, staring at his instruments. These readings can't be right. We're showing 40% over Federation specifications. The readings are correct, Lisa said. The Federation builds ships to work perfectly under perfect conditions. We build ships to work perfectly when everything is going wrong. In the council chamber, Admiral Zixthor concluded his presentation. The holographic display showed the final image. Earth's orbital space, filled with ships that shouldn't exist. Council members, he said. In 3 months, the humans have begun construction of over 50 vessels. All of them exceed our design specifications. All of them violate our understanding of safe engineering practices. He paused. And according to our spies, all of them work perfectly. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. Some delegates demanded immediate action. Others called for patience. A few suggested that perhaps humanity should be invited to share their improvements. Councillor Veltaran raised his hand for silence. Admiral Zixthor, what do you recommend? The Admiral's forearms spread wide. I recommend we find out exactly what the humans are doing, before it's too late to stop them. The Federation inspection ship Harmony docked with Earth's orbital station Delta 7 with perfect precision. Councillor Veltaran stepped through the airlock, followed by a team of the galaxy's best engineers and scientists. They had come to find minor building code violations. They expected to write a few citations and go home. Commander Ryan Mitchell waited to greet them, his uniform crisp and his smile friendly. Welcome to Earth Orbital Space, Counselor. We're honored by your visit. Veltaran nodded politely. His silver hair caught the station's lights as he looked around the docking bay. Everything seemed normal enough. Clean walls, organized equipment, humans bustling about their work. Thank you, Commander. We hope this inspection will be brief and routine. Of course, Ryan said. Chief Petty Officer Collins will give you the full tour. She knows every bolt and wire in this facility. Amy Collins stepped forward, her tool belt jangling softly. She was a small woman with calloused hands and grease under her fingernails. Her smile was genuine but tired. Pleasure to meet you all. Fair warning, though, we've been working triple shifts to meet our construction deadlines. The inspection team followed Amy through the station's corridors. Dr. Zentar, the Federation's top propulsion expert, checked his scanner constantly. The energy readings here are quite high, he muttered to his colleague. Probably just multiple reactors running at once, replied Engineer Polvex. Nothing to worry about. They entered the main construction bay, and the Federation team stopped dead in their tracks. The UES Defiance hung in the center of the space, nearly complete. But it looked nothing like the ships they expected to see. What? Counselor Veltarin said slowly. Is that? Amy looked proud. That's the Defiance, our newest heavy cruiser. Pretty, isn't she? The ship was massive, much larger than Federation designs called for. Its hull was covered in additional armor plating, extra sensor arrays, and weapon mounts that definitely weren't in the original blueprints. Strange bulges and protrusions covered every surface. This is not a Federation design, Dr. Zentar said, his voice rising. Well, no, Amy admitted. We made some improvements. Improvements? Engineer Polvex sputtered. You've completely redesigned it. Amy shrugged. The Federation plans were a good starting point, but we figured you folks wouldn't mind if we fixed a few problems. Problems? Counselor Veltaran asked carefully. What problems? Amy pulled out a datapad and started reading. Well, the original design had only one backup power system. That's not nearly enough, so we added 6 more. 6 more? Dr. Zentar's scanner was beeping frantically. That's impossible. The power flow would be unmanageable. Nah, Amy said, cheerfully. You just need better computers to handle the load balancing, so we built better computers. The inspection team exchanged worried glances. Engineer Polvex cleared his throat. Chief Collins, may we examine the power core? Sure thing. Follow me. They took a lift down to the engineering section. The doors opened to reveal a space that hummed with barely contained energy. The reactor, at the center of the room, was easily twice the size of anything in Federation designs. Dr. Greg Patterson looked up from his work console. He was a thin man with wild hair and coffee stains on his lab coat. Oh, hi there, you must be the inspection team. I'm Greg, theoretical physics consultant. Dr. Patterson, Counselor Veltaran said, could you explain what we're looking at? Here. Greg's eyes lit up. Oh, this is the fun part. So the Federation uses pure antimatter reactors, right? Very clean, very efficient, but they have a problem. What problem? Dr. Zentar asked. They explode if you look at them wrong, Greg said matter-of-factly. So we figured, why not combine antimatter with fusion? Best of both worlds. The antimatter gives you the power, the fusion gives you the stability. That's not how physics works, Dr. Zentar protested. Greg pulled up a holographic display showing power flow diagrams. Well, it wasn't how physics worked, but we sort of convinced it to work differently. The display showed energy levels that made the Federation scientists gasp. The reactor was producing nearly double what their best facilities could manage. This is impossible, Engineer Polvex whispered. Yeah, we get that a lot, Amy said. Want to see the weapon systems? Before anyone could object, she led them to another section of the ship. The weapons bay was filled with devices that looked like they belonged in a museum of torture instruments rather than a starship. Now, your standard Federation ships have 2 main beam weapons and maybe a dozen missiles, Amy explained. We figured that wasn't enough for a proper fight. She pointed to various weapon systems. We've got the main beam arrays, of course. But we also added pulse cannons, plasma torpedoes, kinetic railguns, and a really nasty surprise we call the Planet Cracker. Planet Cracker? Counselor Veltaran asked weakly. It's probably not strong enough to actually crack a planet, Amy said thoughtfully. But it'll definitely ruin someone's day. Dr. Zentar was scanning everything frantically. The power requirements for these weapons should overload your reactor instantly. That's why we have 7 backup power systems, Greg said, appearing beside them. An emergency power, and auxiliary emergency power, and the backup to the emergency auxiliary power. How many power systems does this ship have? Engineer Polvex asked. Amy and Greg looked at each other and shrugged. We stopped, counting at 15, Amy said. The inspection team spent the next 4 hours going through the ship. Every system they examined was over-engineered to an absurd degree. The life support could handle 3 times the normal crew. The computers had backups for their backups. The hull armor was thick enough to stop weapons that didn't exist. Why? Counselor Veltarin finally asked. Why build everything so excessively? Amy sat down on a toolbox and took a sip from her coffee cup. Well, sir, it's like this. The Federation designs are real nice. They work great when everything goes according to plan. But out here in the real world, things don't go according to plan. What do you mean? Dr. Zentar asked. I mean, Amy said, what happens when your main power goes out in the middle of a fight? Or when your computer gets fried by enemy fire? Or when your life support takes a hit and you've got 300 people depending on you to keep them breathing? She stood up and gestured at the ship around them. Federation ships are built to be elegant. Human ships are built to keep working when everything else has gone to hell. Greg nodded enthusiastically. We call it redundant redundancy. If one system fails, you've got a backup. If the backup fails, you've got a backup to the backup. If that fails, you've got a backup to the backup to the backup. And if that fails? Engineer Polvex asked. Then you get creative, Amy said with a grin. The inspection team finished their tour in uncomfortable silence. As they prepared to leave, Counselor Veltarin pulled Commander Mitchell aside. Commander, he said quietly, how many ships like this are you building? Ryan thought for a moment. This class? About 20. But we've got 5 other classes in various stages of construction. 5 other classes? Well, the Defiance is a heavy cruiser. We're also building light cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and dreadnoughts. Counselor Veltarin felt a chill run down his spine. Dreadnoughts? Oh yeah, Ryan said casually. Those are the really big ones. Twice the size of the Defiance, with 4 times the firepower. As the Federation inspection team prepared to depart, Amy Collins waved goodbye from the observation deck. Thanks for visiting. Come back anytime. Dr. Zentar was still staring at his scanner readings. These energy signatures, they're not possible. Nothing about this is possible, Engineer Polvex muttered. Counselor Veltarin looked back at the human orbital facility one last time. Through the windows he could see dozens of ships under construction. Each one looked more impossible than the last. Commander, he said to his pilot, set course for Centaura Prime, maximum speed. Yes, sir. Should I file a priority report? Veltarin thought about everything he had seen. Ships that shouldn't work but did. Humans who treated the laws of physics like suggestions rather than rules. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a growing worry about what humanity might be planning. File an emergency report, he said, and wake up the full council. We need to discuss this immediately. As the Harmony jumped to faster than light speed, Amy Collins finished her shift and headed home. Tomorrow, she would start working on the Rio UES Vengeance. That ship was going to be even more impossible than the Defiance. She couldn't wait to see the look on the Federation's faces when they saw what humanity could really build. The joint training exercise was supposed to be simple. Federation Fleet Admiral Kevarn had run these drills 1,000 times with new species. The humans would follow standard procedures, learn proper formation flying, and everyone would go home happy. That was the plan. Admiral Tony Barnes stood on the bridge of the UES Relentless, watching the Federation fleet take their positions. 12 ships arranged in a perfect diamond formation, moving with practiced precision. Beautiful, too. Watch, but it made Tony nervous. They fly like they're in a parade, he muttered to his executive officer. Lieutenant Commander Sam Hughes looked up from his communication station. Sir, Admiral Kevarn is requesting we take position at the rear of the formation. The rear? Tony raised an eyebrow. Tell the Admiral we appreciate the offer, but humans prefer to lead from the front. On the Federation flagship, Admiral Kevarn received the human response with confusion. His tactical officer, a bug-like creature named Ziktar, clicked his mandibles nervously. Sir, the humans are not following standard protocol. They're moving to attack position. Impossible, Kevarn said. This is a training exercise. There are no enemies here. The exercise scenario was straightforward. A simulated enemy fleet would attack a convoy of merchant ships. The Federation and human fleets would work together to defend the convoy using standard defensive tactics that had protected trade routes for centuries. Captain Nicole Stevens commanded the UES Relentless, humanity's newest heavy cruiser. As she watched the Federation ships form their protective screen around the merchants, she shook her head. "They're bunching up," she told her tactical officer, Lieutenant Brad Johnson. "One good shot from the enemy and half their fleet gets wiped out." "Should we tell them?" Brad asked. "They wouldn't listen," Nicole said. "Humans have been fighting outnumbered for thousands of years. The Federation has been fighting with overwhelming numbers for just as long. Different philosophies." The simulated enemy fleet appeared on the sensors. 50 red dots representing hostile ships jumped into the system, outnumbering the defenders 2-1. The Federation fleet immediately began their standard defensive maneuver, tightening their formation around the convoy. "Human ships," Admiral Kevarn broadcast, "please maintain defensive positions. Do not break formation." Admiral Barnes looked at the tactical display and grimaced. The Federation ships were sitting ducks. "Sam, open a channel to all human vessels." "Channel open, sir." "All ships, this is Barnes. Remember what we discussed. These folks have never been in a real fight. Try not to make them look too bad." The simulated enemy fleet began their attack run. Laser fire lit up space as the computer-generated hostiles opened fire on the defenders. The Federation ships returned fire with careful, measured shots, following doctrine that called for conserving ammunition and maintaining formation. The human ships did something completely different. The UES Relentless suddenly accelerated directly toward the enemy fleet, her engines burning at maximum power. Behind her, the other human ships spread out in what looked like complete chaos. "What are they doing?" Admiral Kevarn demanded. His tactical officer was staring at his screens in disbelief. "Sir, the human ships they're attacking. They're supposed to defend the convoy." On the Relentless, Captain Stevens watched the enemy formation rush toward her. "Brad, target their command ship. Full power to forward weapons." "Ma'am, we're outnumbered 12-1 on this vector." 12-1? Nicole grinned. "Those are pretty good odds for a Tuesday." The Relentless opened fire with everything she had. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and kinetic railguns all fired at once. The enemy command ship's shields flared and died under the massive assault. Then something happened that made the Federation observers gasp. The Relentless took a direct hit from 3 enemy ships at once. The blast should have destroyed her instantly. Instead, her shields flickered, her hull armor sparked, and she kept fighting. "Hull breach on deck 7, Lieutenant Commander Hughes reported calmly. "Switching to backup power grid. All weapons still operational." Admiral Kevarn watched in horror as the human ship continued to fight while trailing atmosphere and debris. "She's been destroyed. Why is she still shooting?" His communications officer looked confused. "Sir, I'm reading her as damaged but functional. Her crew is reporting all systems operational." "That's impossible." The other human ships were causing their own chaos. Instead of maintaining formation, they were weaving through the enemy fleet like fighters, hitting targets and disappearing before return fire could find them. The UES Defiance took on 6 enemy ships at once, her weapons blazing from every angle. Lieutenant Commander Sam Hughes was coordinating the human fleet communications when he noticed something interesting. The Federation ships were calling for help. "Admiral," he reported to Barnes, "the Federation flagship is requesting immediate assistance. They've lost 3 ships and are falling back." Admiral Barnes looked at the tactical display. The Federation defensive line was crumbling under enemy fire. Their beautiful formations were breaking apart as damaged ships retreated for repairs. "All human ships," he broadcast. "The Federation needs help. Time to show them how we fight when we're serious." What happened next would be discussed in military academies for years. The human ships, many of them damaged and running on backup power, regrouped and launched a coordinated assault on the remaining enemy fleet. The UES Relentless, still leaking air and sparking from battle damage, led the charge. Captain Stevens had lost main power twice, but her ship kept fighting on emergency systems that the Federation didn't even know existed. "Ma'am, Lieutenant Johnson reported. We're down to auxiliary power, emergency weapons, and the backup life support system. Perfect, Nicole said. That means we're just getting warmed up. The Relentless dove into the heart of the enemy formation, her weapon systems cycling through backup after backup. Every time the Federation observers thought she was finished, another weapon system came online. Admiral Kevarn watched his tactical display with growing amazement. The human ships were fighting with equipment that should have failed hours ago. Ships that looked like floating wrecks were still destroying enemy vessels with frightening efficiency. How are they still functional? He asked his engineering officer. Sir, according to our scans, the human ships have backup systems for systems we didn't know they had. They're running on power sources that aren't in any of our technical manuals. The exercise ended with the complete destruction of the simulated enemy fleet. The Federation had lost 8 ships and had 4 more badly damaged. The human fleet had taken massive damage but hadn't lost a single vessel. In the aftermath, Admiral Kevarn requested permission to come aboard the Relentless. What he found there shocked him more than the battle itself. Captain Stevens met him in a corridor that was scorched and filled with emergency lighting. Repair crews worked frantically to fix damage while the ship's systems hummed with power from sources that shouldn't exist. Captain Stevens, Admiral Kevarn said, "Your ship took hits that should have destroyed her. How are you still operational?" Nicole wiped grease from her hands with a rag. Well, Admiral, it's like this. Federation ships are built to avoid getting hit. Human ships are built to get hit and keep fighting. She led him to the engineering section, where Dr. Lisa Rodriguez was directing repair efforts. The reactor room looked like a war zone, but the massive fusion antimatter hybrid was still producing power. Dr. Rodriguez, Admiral Kevarn said, your reactor took a direct hit. How is it still running? Lisa looked up from her work. Oh, that wasn't the main reactor. That was reactor number 3. We've got 6 more where that came from. 6 more? Reactors? Well, 5 now. Number 2 is offline for maintenance. But we've still got the emergency reactor, the backup emergency reactor, and the really bad day reactor that we haven't had to use yet. Admiral Kevarn stared at the human engineer. What kind of day would require a really bad day reactor? Lisa and Nicole exchanged glances. The kind of day, Nicole said slowly, when you're the last ship standing between the enemy and everything you care about. As the Federation admiral toured the damaged but still functional ship, he began to understand something important. The humans didn't just build ships differently. They thought about war differently. Captain Stevens, he said as they returned to the bridge, your tactics were highly irregular. You broke formation, ignored orders, and fought like barbarians. Nicole nodded. Yes, sir, and we won. You were lucky. Admiral, Nicole said seriously, humans stopped believing in luck about the same time we figured out how to split the atom. We make our own luck, and we plan for when luck runs out. Admiral Kevarn left the human ship with a lot to think about. As his shuttle returned to the Federation flagship, he looked back at the human fleet. Every ship showed battle damage, but every ship was still operational and ready to fight again. His aide, Commander Felix, joined him at the viewport. Sir, what do we tell the Council? Admiral Kevarn watched the UES Relentless begin repairs while maintaining full combat readiness. We tell them, he said quietly, that humanity fights wars like they expect to lose. And that's exactly why they never do. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council had been going on for 6 hours. 47 different species argued, debated, and shouted at each other in the Great Chamber while holographic displays showed the terrifying truth about human shipbuilding. Ambassador Peter Walsh sat quietly in the human delegation section, sipping coffee from a thermal mug. He had been listening to the panic and fear in the alien voices for hours. Now it was time to speak. Councillor Veltarin stood at the center podium, his silver hair reflecting the chamber's lights. The evidence is clear, he announced. Humanity has violated every construction standard we gave them. Their ships exceed our specifications by impossible margins. Impossible is the right word, declared Science Minister Kexvor from the Rigel system. Our computers show that human ships should explode the moment they turn on their engines. Yet somehow they work. Dr. Yilthun, the Federation's chief physicist, activated a holographic display. Look at these power readings from the human ship, called Relentless. During the training exercise, this vessel produced energy levels that our best facilities cannot match. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Many delegates had seen the exercise reports. The human ships had fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Furthermore, Dr. Yilthun continued, the humans claim their ships can operate on something they call backup power. Our analysis shows this backup power is stronger than our main power systems. Trade Representative Colmere from the merchant world stood up. Perhaps we should focus on the real issue. The humans are building a war fleet, 200 ships and counting. Why do they need so many weapons? All eyes turned to Ambassador Walsh. He stood slowly, his coffee mug still in his hand, and walked to the speaking platform. The chamber fell silent. Counselors, Peter began, his voice calm and friendly. I appreciate your concerns, but I think there's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Counselor Velteran's voice was sharp. Your people have built ships that violate the laws of physics, Peter smiled. Well, that's not exactly true. We haven't violated any laws of physics. We just found some loopholes. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Security Minister Draktor, a large reptilian being, leaned forward. What do you mean, loopholes? It's simple, Peter said. Your scientists told us that certain things were impossible. Our engineers asked, impossible or just really hard? Turns out most things are just really hard. Director Helen Carter entered the chamber carrying a large briefcase. She was the head of human strategic planning, and her arrival made several delegates nervous. Helen was known throughout the galaxy as someone who thought 10 steps ahead. Counselors, Helen said as she joined Peter at the podium, may I share something with you? It's called Murphy's Law. Dr. Yilthun looked confused. Murphy's Law? Is this some human scientific principle? In a way, Helen replied. Murphy's Law states that anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and usually at the worst possible time. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a data pad. This is why human ships seem over-engineered to you. We don't build ships for perfect conditions. We build ships for when everything goes wrong at once. Colonel Matt Johnson, the human, military attaché, stepped forward. He was a large man with scars on his hands and a serious expression. Counselors, may I ask you something? How many wars has the Federation fought in the last 1,000 years? The delegates looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, Counselor, Velteran answered, we have maintained peace for over 800 years. 800 years of peace, Matt repeated. That's wonderful, really. But humanity has never had 800 years of peace. We've been fighting wars since we learned to make fire. He activated his own holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of ancient battles, world wars, and space conflicts filled the air above the chamber. We learned to build things that work when everything is trying to kill you, Matt continued. Your ships are designed by people who have never been shot at. Our ships are designed by people who assume they will be shot at constantly. Science Minister Kexvor stood up angrily. Are you saying we don't know how to build proper ships? I'm saying, Matt replied calmly, that you build ships for the galaxy you have. We build ships for the galaxy we might get. Helen Carter stepped forward. Counselors, let me share our strategic analysis with you. She activated another holographic display, this one showing star maps and fleet positions. This is the current galactic situation, she said. The Federation controls most of known space. You have achieved peace through overwhelming strength and superior technology. It's worked for centuries. The display changed, showing threat assessments and probability calculations. But our analysis shows several potential problems. Unknown threats from beyond Federation space, internal conflicts between member species, resource shortages in outer systems. These are theoretical problems, Counselor Velteran protested. Our computers show the probability of major conflict is less than 1%. Your computers, Helen said gently, are programmed by people who have lived in peace for 8 centuries. Our computers are programmed by people who assume the worst-case scenario is just Tuesday. Ambassador Walsh took over the presentation. Counselors, we're not building a war fleet, we're building an insurance policy. Insurance? Trade Representative Colmere asked. The Federation has given humanity a gift, Peter explained. You've shown us a galaxy where different species can work together in peace. We want to protect that gift. Dr. Yilthan activated his scanner and pointed it at the human delegation. Your ships still violate our understanding of physics. How do you explain that? Helen smiled. Dr. Yilthan, what's the most powerful computer in the Federation? The quantum mind on Centaura Prime. It can perform 1 billion calculations per second. Our ships carry computers that can perform 1 trillion calculations per second, Helen said casually. Each ship has 12 of them. The chamber fell silent. Dr. Yilthan's scanner was beeping frantically. But that's impossible, he whispered. Computers that powerful would require massive power sources. Which is why our ships have multiple fusion antimatter reactors, Colonel Johnson said. The computer systems alone require more power than most Federation ships produce. Counselor Veltaran sat down heavily in his chair. What exactly are you telling us? We're telling you, Peter said, that humanity approaches problems differently. You build elegant solutions for ideal conditions. We build inelegant solutions that work when conditions are terrible. Helen activated one final display, showing detailed technical specifications of human ships. These vessels are designed to operate independently for years. They can manufacture their own parts, grow their own food, and repair damage that would cripple Federation ships. Why? Security Minister Draktor asked. Why build ships that can survive alone? Because, Colonel Johnson said, the worst-case scenario isn't losing a battle. The worst-case scenario is losing a battle when you're far from home, cut off from support, and responsible for the lives of everyone on your ship. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Counselor Veltaran spoke. Ambassador Walsh, what do you want from us? Peter looked around the chamber at the worried faces of the galactic delegates. We want to be good neighbors, he said. We want to share our technology, learn from yours, and work together to keep the peace. And if we refuse? Trade Representative Colmere asked. Then we'll respect your decision, Peter replied. And we'll continue building ships according to human standards. Dr. Yilthan was still staring at his scanner readings. How many ships are you planning to build? Helen and Peter exchanged glances. That depends on how dangerous the galaxy turns out to be, Helen said. Right now, we're planning for moderate danger. If things get worse, we'll build more ships. How many more? Counselor Veltaran asked. Enough, Colonel Johnson said simply. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Ambassador Walsh turned back to address the Council one final time. Counselors, we understand your concerns. But remember, we're not building these ships to threaten you. We're building them to protect everyone. From what? Counselor Veltaran asked. Peter looked out at the vast chamber filled with representatives from dozens of peaceful worlds. From whatever comes next, he said quietly. Because in our experience, something always comes next. The emergency session ended with more questions than answers. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many were already planning urgent meetings with their home governments. In the human delegation quarters, Peter Walsh poured himself another cup of coffee. Helen Carter sat across from him, reviewing her notes. Do you think we scared them too much? She asked. Peter considered the question. Maybe, but it's better than surprising them later. How long do you think we have before they make a decision? Not long, Peter said. But it doesn't matter. We'll keep building ships either way. Through the windows of their quarters, they could see Federation ships moving through space. Beautiful, elegant vessels that had maintained peace for centuries. Soon they might have to learn what it was like to fight for it. The attack came without warning. Long-range sensors detected the massive fleet 6 months after the Federation Council debates. But by then, it was too late to prepare. The Zephyrian Empire had arrived from beyond the galactic rim with 3,000 warships, and they had come to conquer. Fleet Admiral Kevin Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the Federation fleet take position near the outer colonies. The alien ships moved with their usual precision, forming defensive lines that had protected the galaxy for centuries. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "Federation Command is requesting all human ships take support positions behind their main battle line." Kevin looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was enormous, filled with ships that looked like they were built for one purpose: destroying everything in their path. "Tell Federation Command," Kevin said slowly, "that humans don't hide behind other people." Captain Rachel Martinez commanded the UES Indomitable, humanity's newest dreadnought. The ship was a monster, twice the size of anything the Federation had ever built, covered in armor and bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist. "Status report," Rachel called out. "All systems green," replied Lieutenant Commander Alex Parker from the engineering station. "Reactors 1 through 8 are online. Backup systems standing by." "8 reactors?" asked Ensign Katie Murphy, who was new to the ship. "That's just the main ones," Alex explained. "We've got 4 more for emergencies, plus the end-of-the-world reactor that we're not supposed to talk about." The Federation fleet engaged the Zephyrians first. Admiral Kevarn led his ships in a textbook defensive maneuver, using superior technology and coordinated tactics to hold the line. For the first hour, it worked perfectly. "Federation ships are reporting heavy casualties," Major Scott Anderson said from his station. He commanded the Indomitable's Marine contingent, soldiers, trained for the worst situations imaginable. Kevin watched the battle display with growing concern. Federation ships were beautiful fighters when everything went according to plan. But the Zephyrians weren't following any plan the Federation understood. "They're not trying to defeat the Federation fleet," Kevin realized. "They're trying to break it." The Zephyrian ships used kamikaze tactics, ramming damaged vessels into Federation formations. They ignored losses that would have made any civilized species retreat. Worst of all, they adapted to Federation tactics faster than anyone thought possible. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "Federation Command is requesting immediate assistance. They've lost 40% of their fleet." Kevin looked at the tactical display. The elegant Federation formations were collapsing under the brutal Zephyrian assault. Ships that were designed to avoid damage were being overwhelmed by an enemy that didn't care about taking damage. "All human ships," Kevin broadcast. "This is Admiral Torres. Remember your training. Fight like the galaxy depends on it, because it does." The human fleet moved forward and everything changed. The UES Indomitable led the charge, her massive bulk accelerating toward the heart of the Zephyrian formation. Behind her, dozens of human ships spread out in what looked like chaos but was actually carefully planned disorder. "Contact," Lieutenant Commander Parker reported as the first Zephyrian ships opened fire. The Indomitable's shields flared under the enemy assault. Plasma beams and particle weapons lit up the darkness as the human dreadnought took hits that would have destroyed 3 Federation ships. "Shields down to 60%, Parker reported calmly. "Switching to backup power grid." Captain Martinez smiled grimly. "Now we're warmed up. Return fire all weapons." The Indomitable's response was devastating. Dozens of weapon systems fired at once, each one powered by a different reactor. The lead Zephyrian ship simply vanished under the concentrated assault, but the aliens kept coming. "Hull breach on decks 12 through 15, reported damage. Control Chief Ben Foster. "Emergency bulkheads are holding, no casualties." "Ma'am," Ensign Murphy called out, "we've lost main power to the forward weapons." "Switch to auxiliary power," Rachel ordered. "Already did." "We lost that too." "Emergency power?" "Also gone." Rachel looked at her engineering officer. "Alex?" Lieutenant Commander Parker's fingers flew over his controls. "Switching to backup emergency power. All forward weapons back online." The Zephyrians concentrated their fire on the Indomitable, recognizing her as the main threat. The massive ship took hit after hit, her armor sparking and her hull cracking under the assault. "We're taking heavy damage," Major Anderson reported. "But all combat systems are still operational." "How is that possible?" Ensign Murphy asked. "Because," Chief Foster said over the intercom, "human ships are built by people who expect everything to break at the worst possible moment." The battle raged for 6 hours. Federation ships following their training retreated when damaged to repair and regroup. Human ships did the opposite. The more damage they took, the more aggressively they fought. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "the UES Relentless is requesting permission to ram the Zephyrian command ship." Kevin looked at the tactical display. The Relentless had lost most of her weapons and was running on emergency power. By Federation standards, she should have retreated hours ago. "Tell Captain Stevens she's crazy," Kevin said. "Then tell her permission granted." The Relentless, trailing atmosphere and debris, accelerated toward the massive Zephyrian flagship. The enemy ship's weapons tore into the human cruiser, but she kept coming. At the last moment, the Relentless fired everything she had left. The combined explosion destroyed both ships and took out 3 nearby Zephyrian vessels. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Parker called out on the Indomitable, "we're down to emergency backup auxiliary power. Main engineering is flooded. Hull breaches. On 20 decks." "What's our combat effectiveness?" and Rachel asked. "About 90%, ma'am." Admiral Kevarn, watching from his damaged Federation flagship, couldn't believe what he was seeing. The human ships were floating wrecks that refused to stop fighting. Ships that looked like they should be abandoned were still destroying enemy vessels. "How are they still functional?" he asked his engineering officer. "Sir, according to our scans, the human ships are running on systems we don't understand. They have backup power sources that aren't in any technical manual." The tide of battle turned when the Zephyrians made a critical mistake. They focused all their fire on the most damaged human ships, expecting them to be easy targets. Instead, they discovered that damaged human ships were often more dangerous than undamaged ones. The UES Defiance had lost her main engines, most of her weapons, and half her crew compartments. She was running on what her engineer called spite and coffee grounds. But when a Zephyrian battlecruiser moved in for the kill, the Defiance surprised everyone. "This is the Defiance," came the transmission. That would become legend. "Federation Command, we've lost primary power, secondary power, and our tertiary backup. We're switching to emergency coffee-powered generators. We remain combat effective." The Defiance's coffee-powered generators turned out to be a backup fusion reactor that her crew had jury-rigged using parts from the ship's galley. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. The Zephyrian fleet began to retreat after losing 2/3 of their ships. They had expected to face an enemy that fought with honor and followed rules. Instead, they found humans who fought like cornered animals and refused to give up no matter how badly damaged they became. As the enemy fled, Admiral Torres surveyed the battlefield. The Federation had lost over half their fleet, but every human ship, no matter how damaged, was still operational. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "Federation Command is requesting a full technical briefing on human ship construction." Kevin looked out at his battered fleet. Ships that looked like they had been through a blender were already beginning repairs, their crews working with tools and spare parts that seemed to come from nowhere. "Tell them," Kevin said, "that we'll be happy to share everything we know, but warn them that our manuals are pretty thick." Captain Martinez walked through the damaged corridors of the Indomitable, checking on her crew. Despite taking enough damage to destroy a space station, the ship was still fully operational. "Captain," Chief Foster called out, "we've got the main reactor back online, and I found the backup life support system working perfectly." "The backup system?" Rachel asked. "Yeah, turns out the guy who designed this ship had trust issues. There are systems on this ship that have systems." On the Federation flagship, Admiral Kevarn met with his senior staff to discuss the battle. The humans had saved the galaxy, but they had done it in ways that challenged everything the Federation thought they knew about warfare. "Sir," his chief engineer reported, "we've analyzed the human ship's performance during the battle. They continued, fighting with damage levels that should have been impossible to survive." "How?" Admiral Kevarn asked. "Redundancy, sir. They have backup systems for systems we didn't know existed. When their main reactor failed, they switched to backup reactors. When those failed, they had emergency reactors. When those failed, they apparently had what one human engineer called the reactor we're not supposed to talk about." 3 months later, Federation shipyards began retooling their production lines. The new ships looked different, bulkier and less elegant though.
The alarm bells rang across Zephyria Prime, their sharp sound echoing through the crystal towers that reached high into the purple sky. Council Speaker Zixthera moved as quickly as his 6 legs could carry him down the long hallway toward the emergency meeting chamber. His blue scales were darker than usual, a sign of deep worry among his people. The Galactic Council had not called an emergency meeting in over 300 years. The last time was when the Krathan Empire had threatened to destroy a peaceful trading world, but this was different. This was worse than anything they had faced before. Zixthera entered the Great Chamber, where representatives from 47 different alien species were gathering. The room was enormous, with seats designed for creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some delegates floated in special tanks filled with liquid. Others hung from the ceiling using their natural flying abilities. A few sat in mechanical suits that helped them survive in the chamber's atmosphere. "Friends and allies," Zixthera called out, his voice amplified by the chamber's sound system. "We face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history. The sensors have detected something terrible approaching from the outer rim of the galaxy." Military Advisor Quindor stepped forward from his position near the main display screen. He was a Krathan, one of the warrior species that had once been enemies of the Council, but now served as their military experts. His thick armor plates were black with worry markings, and his forearms moved nervously as he prepared to speak. "The energy signature is massive," Quindor said, his deep voice filling the chamber. "Our best scientists have analyzed the readings 3 times. The approaching vessel appears to be over 12 kilometers in length. Its power output is greater than our entire combined fleet." A wave of shocked sounds filled the chamber. The Alteran delegate, a peaceful creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, pulsed with frightened colors, an insect-like Vexani. Representatives clicked their mandibles in distress. Even the mighty Torgan, who were known for their bravery, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "How is such a thing possible?" asked Delegate Morden from the Centauri Federation. "The largest ships in our fleet are barely 1 kilometer long. What kind of civilization builds vessels of such enormous size?" Quindor activated the main display, showing a rough image constructed from sensor data. The shape that appeared made the entire chamber fall silent. The vessel was sleek and deadly looking, covered in what appeared to be weapon ports and armor plating. It looked like something from their oldest nightmares. "The vessel comes from a system our charts call Southri," Quindor continued. "Our records show it as uninhabited, but clearly we were wrong. This species has built what can only be described as a mobile weapons platform, a ship designed for one purpose: destruction." Elder Kefta of the Wisdom Keepers floated forward in her energy chair. She was over 800 years old and had seen more galactic history than anyone else in the chamber. Her ancient voice trembled as she spoke. "I have studied the old legends," she said. "There are stories passed down from the first civilizations. Tales of the world eaters and star killers. Ships so large they could crack planets and burn entire systems. We thought they were just myths. What do we know about these creatures from Sol 3? Asked the Nexari Prime Minister, his tentacles waving anxiously. Science Coordinator Velenex consulted her datapad with her multiple eyes. "Very little, I'm afraid." The system appeared to be a simple stellar formation with several rocky planets. "Our surveys indicated primitive life at best. But clearly, these beings have been hiding their true capabilities." "Could they be refugees?" suggested the Alteran delegate, hopefully. "Perhaps they built such a large ship to evacuate their entire population." Quindor shook his massive head. "No refugee ship needs that many weapon emplacements. This is a warship. Pure and simple. It's the most powerful warship ever detected in this galaxy." The chamber erupted in frightened chatter as delegates from different species spoke in their own languages. The universal translators worked hard to convert dozens of alien voices into understandable speech, but the meaning was clear in every language: fear. "What are our options?" Zixthera called out, trying to restore order to the meeting. "We could try to negotiate," suggested a diplomat from the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. "Send messages offering tribute or surrender before they arrive." "Surrender to what?" demanded a Krathan war leader. "We don't even know what they want. They could be coming to harvest our worlds for resources, Or enslave our populations? Or worse? Could we fight them? Asked another delegate. Quinder looked at his tactical analysis again. Our combined fleet consists of nearly 10,000 ships from all member worlds. According to these readings, this single vessel could destroy our entire force. Its shield generators alone produce more energy than most of our capital ships. Then we run, said Elder Kefta sadly. We evacuate the systems in its path and hope it passes through our territory without stopping. But where would we go? Asked the Nexari Prime Minister. If they can build one ship like this, they can build more. Eventually, they will find us no matter where we hide. The chamber fell silent as the terrible truth sank in. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through diplomacy and cooperation. Their ships were designed for exploration, trade, and research. None of them had ever imagined they would face an enemy with such overwhelming power. How long until it arrives in our space? Zixthera asked quietly. Based on its current speed and trajectory, Quinder calculated approximately 72 standard hours. It appears to be heading for the Kepler 442 system, the Nexari homeworld, whispered someone in the chamber. Prime Minister Veltar of the Nexari Federation stood up on his four legs, his fur standing on end with terror. My people. What will happen to my people? No one in the chamber had an answer. They could only watch their sensors and wait as the massive human warship continued its approach, carrying with it the fate of every civilization in the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, his hands gripping the metal railing as he looked out at the stars through the massive viewing window. The bridge stretched nearly 100 meters from side to side, filled with dozens of crew members working at their stations. Red and blue lights blinked across countless control panels. The soft hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the floor. All systems are showing green, Captain, called out Chief Engineer Lisa Carter from her station near the back of the bridge. Her voice carried easily across the space, but it still seemed small compared to the enormous room around them. The fusion reactors are running at perfect levels. The jump drive is ready for activation. Jake nodded and turned to face the main screen at the front of the bridge. The screen was so large it took up most of the wall, showing a view of space ahead of them. Stars dotted the darkness like tiny diamonds, and in the distance, he could see the curve of Earth, their home planet looking small and blue against the black void. The EU's Goliath was unlike anything humanity had ever built before. The ship stretched over 12 kilometers from front to back, making it longer than most cities. Its hull was dark gray metal, covered in weapon ports, sensor arrays, and docking bays. Inside, 50,000 crew members lived and worked in a floating city among the stars. Communications Officer Rodriguez, any word from Earth Command? Jake asked, walking over to the communications station, where Danny Rodriguez sat, surrounded by screens and radio equipment. Admiral Brooks is standing by, Captain, Danny replied, adjusting his headset. She's waiting for your signal to begin the mission. Jake looked around the bridge one more time. His crew had trained for 2 years to operate this massive ship. They were the best of the best, chosen from every branch of Earth's military and space program. Some were veterans of the Mars colonies, others had served on the smaller patrol ships that protected Earth's solar system. All of them knew this was the most important mission in human history. Put the Admiral on the main screen, Jake ordered. The view of space disappeared, replaced by the face of Admiral Helen Brooks. She sat in her office at Earth Command, her gray hair pulled back and her blue uniform decorated with medals from decades of service. Behind her, Jake could see other officers moving around the command center. All of them focused on monitoring the Goliath's first mission. Captain Morrison, the Admiral said, her voice serious but encouraging. How does it feel to command humanity's greatest achievement? Jake smiled slightly. It feels like a big responsibility, Admiral. This ship could fight off an entire alien fleet if we had to. I just hope we don't have to. It's exactly why we built her, Admiral Brooks replied. We don't know what's out there in the galaxy. For all we know, there could be hostile aliens with technology far beyond ours. The Goliath gives us a fighting chance. The ship had been designed with every possible threat in mind. Its main weapons could destroy asteroids the size of mountains. Its shields could protect it from nuclear explosions. Its armor was thick enough to stop any known weapon. The military planners had looked at every science fiction movie and book they could find, trying to imagine what kinds of enemies humanity might face among the stars. Science Officer Phillips, report on our destination. Jake called out. Ryan Phillips looked up from his station, which was covered with charts, graphs, and sensor readings. The Kepler 442 system is 37 light-years from Earth, Captain. Our long-range sensors detected artificial signals coming from that area 6 months ago. The signals suggest advanced technology, possibly from multiple civilizations.
Oh.
Jake felt his heart beat faster. After centuries of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they were finally going to find out. The signals from Kepler 442 were clearly artificial, showing patterns that could only come from intelligent life. This would be humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. Navigator Chen, plot our course, Jake ordered. Amy Chen's fingers moved quickly across her control panel, calculating the exact path they would need to take. Course plotted and ready, Captain. The jump will take approximately 6 hours using our new hyperspace drive. Dr. Turner, is your team ready for first contact procedures? Jake asked, turning to the ship's head scientist. Dr. Ben Turner nodded eagerly. My xenobiology team has prepared for every scenario we could think of, Captain. We have translation programs, biological scanners, and diplomatic protocols ready to go. We're as prepared as we can be for meeting alien life. Jake walked back to his command chair, a large seat in the center of the bridge that gave him a view of all the stations around him. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child, but now that it was here, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The Goliath wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's representative to the galaxy.
All stations.
Prepare for jump, Jake announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the ship through the intercom system. Throughout the massive vessel, 50,000 crew members stopped what they were doing and secured themselves for the journey ahead. Admiral Brooks, we are ready to depart, Jake reported to the main screen. Good luck, Captain Morrison, the Admiral replied. Bring us back some friends. The screen switched back to the view of space ahead. Jake could feel the ship's engines building power, creating a vibration that seemed to come from the very bones of the massive vessel. The jump drive was humanity's newest technology, allowing them to travel faster than light by bending space itself. Jump drive at full power, Lisa Carter reported. All systems ready. Take us to the stars, Jake ordered. The Goliath leaped forward into hyperspace, disappearing from Earth's solar system in a flash of blue light. Behind them, the planet Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that their greatest ship was about to announce humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. In the depths of space, sensitive alien sensors detected the massive energy signature of the Goliath's jump drive. Across dozens of star systems, alien civilizations looked up at their sky in wonder and fear, not knowing that humanity was coming to say hello. The Goliath dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system with a flash of blue light that lit up the darkness like a small star. Captain Jake Morrison felt his stomach settle as the ship's artificial gravity adjusted to normal. Space? The journey had taken 6 hours, but it felt like minutes to the excited crew. Jump complete, Captain, announced Navigator Amy Chen from her station. All systems normal. We are now in the Kepler 442 system. Jake looked out at the main viewing screen, which showed a beautiful yellow star surrounded by several planets. 2 of the worlds looked blue and green, suggesting they had water and plant life. Smaller moons orbited around the larger planets. Jake could see the distant sparkle of what might be space stations or satellites. Science Officer Phillips, what are you reading? Jake asked, walking over to the science station where Ryan Phillips was studying multiple screens filled with data. It's incredible, Captain, Ryan replied, his voice filled with excitement. I'm detecting at least 12 different civilizations in this system. There are cities on 3 of the planets, space stations orbiting 2 others, and what looks like mining operations on several moons. 12 civilizations living together in one system? Jake asked in amazement. That's more cooperation than we've ever managed in our own solar system. It gets better, Ryan continued. The technology levels appear to be quite advanced. I'm seeing fusion reactors, artificial gravity generators, and faster-than-light communication networks. These beings have been spacefaring for a long time, Lieutenant. Kate Sullivan looked up from her communications console with a puzzled expression. Captain, this is strange. I'm not picking up any radio chatter at all. For a system with this many civilizations, I should be hearing thousands of different signals. But it's completely quiet, Jake frowned. When humans had first started using radio technology, Earth's atmosphere had been filled with signals from television stations and communication satellites. A system with 12 advanced civilizations should be buzzing with electronic noise. Maybe they use a different type of communication technology, suggested Dr. Ben Turner from the Xenobiology Station. Something we don't recognize yet. Or maybe they know we're here, and they're staying quiet on purpose, Jake said thoughtfully. Navigator Chen, take us toward the most populated planet. See if we can get their attention. The Goliath began moving deeper into the system, its massive bulk casting shadows across the smaller worlds as it passed. The ship's sensors continued to scan everything around them, building a detailed picture of this alien civilization. Captain, called out tech specialist Chris Morgan from his engineering station. The ship's AI is detecting some unusual readings. It looks like there are thousands of smaller vessels in the system, but they're all powered down. No engines running, no weapons active, no life support systems operating. Shh. Jake raised an eyebrow. Powered down? All of them? Yes, sir. It's like they all shut down their systems at the same time. The AI estimates there are over 5,000 ships in various locations throughout the system, but none of them are active. That's very strange behavior, Dr. Turner commented. Why would so? Many ships shut down simultaneously. The Goliath continued its approach toward the main planet, which Ryan Phillips had identified as having the largest population. As they got closer, Jake could see huge cities covering entire continents, with lights that sparkled like jewels against the planet's surface. Distance to the planet? Jake asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Amy Chen reported. We should be clearly visible to their sensors by now. Still no communications, Captain Kate Sullivan said from her station. I've tried broadcasting on every frequency we know. Standard mathematical sequences, prime numbers, even simple pictures. Nothing. Jake was beginning to feel worried. Every science fiction movie he had ever watched, the aliens either attacked immediately or tried to communicate. This complete silence was unsettling. Maybe we should try a different approach, suggested diplomatic attached Nicole Parker, who had been quietly observing from the back of the bridge. What if we launch a small shuttle? Single person in a tiny ship might seem less threatening than this massive vessel. That's not a bad idea, Jake agreed. Commander Johnson, prepare a diplomatic shuttle. Take Ambassador Stone with you and approach the planet slowly. Use every peaceful signal we know. Commander Steve Johnson nodded and headed for the shuttle. Bay Ambassador Rachel Stone gathered her diplomatic materials and followed him. They had trained for this moment for years, practicing first contact scenarios with human actors playing alien roles, as the Goliath took position in orbit around the planet. Jake could see the massive shadow his ship cast on the surface below. The shadow was so large it covered entire mountain ranges, making the planet's day cycles shorter in the areas beneath them. Shuttle Bay reports ready for launch, announced the ship's AI, Samantha Hayes, in her calm electronic voice. Launch when? Ready? Jake ordered. A small bay door opened on the side of the Goliath, and a tiny shuttle emerged. Compared to the massive warship, the shuttle looked like a small insect flying away from a giant metal whale. The shuttle's engines glowed softly as it began its descent toward the planet's atmosphere. Captain Ryan Phillips called out urgently. I'm detecting massive power surges on the planet's surface. It looks like they're activating emergency systems all across the continents. Emergency systems? Jake asked with concern. Defensive shields, underground bunkers, communication blackouts, Ryan explained. Sir, I think they're preparing for war. Jake stared at the main screen, watching their tiny shuttle approach the beautiful alien world below. He had come here, hoping to make friends with humanity's first alien neighbors. Instead, it seemed like the aliens thought he was bringing war to their doorstep. This isn't going the way we planned, Jake muttered to himself, wondering what he could do to show these aliens that humans came in peace. Prime Minister Veltar stood in the emergency command center, deep beneath the capital city of Nexar Prime, his forelegs shaking with fear as he watched the massive alien warship position itself in orbit above his world. The underground bunker had been built centuries ago during the last Great War, but no one had ever imagined they would face an enemy this powerful. "How many citizens have reached the shelters?" Veltar asked his emergency coordinator. 85% of the population is now underground, Prime Minister, replied Commander Zephanac, his military uniform stained with sweat from the frantic evacuation efforts. "But we don't have enough supplies to keep everyone fed for more than a few days." Veltar looked at the main display screen, which showed a live image of the alien vessel hanging in space above them. The ship was so large it looked like a second moon had appeared in their sky. Its dark metal hull was covered with what appeared to be hundreds of weapon ports, each one capable of destroying entire cities. "Any word from the other planets in our system?" Veltar asked. "The Altarians have evacuated their floating cities and hidden in the deep ocean," Zephanac reported. "The Vexani have sealed their hive cities and gone completely silent. The mining colonies on the outer moons have shut down all operations and are pretending to be dead rocks. And the Galactic Council? They're monitoring the situation, but they've made it clear that no help is coming. This creature's too powerful for our combined fleets to fight." Veltar closed his eyes and tried to calm his breathing. His people had lived in peace for over 1,000 years. They were traders and artists, not warriors. Their ships were designed to carry cargo and passengers between worlds, not to fight against monsters from the unknown depths of space. "Prime Minister," called out sensor operator Lixara from her station. "The alien ship is doing something. It's opening some kind of bay door." All eyes in the command center turned to the screen. They watched in terrified silence as a small opening appeared on the side of the massive warship. A tiny speck emerged from the opening, growing larger as it approached their planet. "It's launching an attack craft," Zephanac said grimly. "A single fighter, probably to test our defenses before the main assault." "No," Lixara said, studying her readings more carefully. "It's too small to be a fighter craft. And it's not moving like an attack vessel. It's coming in slowly, almost carefully." Veltar watched the tiny craft descend through their atmosphere. Compared to the massive mothership above, it was barely visible. But he knew that even this small vessel probably carried enough firepower to level their capital city. "Maybe it's a scout," suggested another officer. "Gathering information about our cities and defenses before the invasion begins. Or maybe it's carrying some kind of weapon," Zephanac added. "A bomb designed to destroy our atmosphere, or a plague to wipe out our population." On the surface above them, millions of Nexari citizens huddled in underground shelters, emergency bunkers, and reinforced basements. Parents held their children close, whispering prayers to ancient gods they had almost forgotten. The elderly remembered stories from their grandparents about the old wars. But nothing in their history had prepared them for this. "Commander." Steve Johnson guided his shuttle through the planet's upper atmosphere, marveling at the beautiful blue and green world below him. The cities were clearly visible from space, their lights twinkling like stars across the continents. But something was wrong. There were no aircraft in the sky, no traffic moving on the roads, no ships in the harbors. "Ambassador Stone, are you seeing this?" Steve asked his passenger. Ambassador Rachel Stone looked out the shuttle's window at the seemingly deserted planet below. "It's like everyone just disappeared. Where is everybody?" "Maybe they're all indoors," Steve suggested. "Different species might have different daily cycles. Maybe this is their sleep period." Back on the Goliath, Captain Morrison was becoming increasingly frustrated with the lack of response from the planet below. Tech specialist Chris Morgan had been trying to boost their communication signals, pushing their transmitters to maximum power to try to reach the silent aliens. "Try increasing the signal strength again," Jake ordered. "Maybe their equipment operates on different frequencies than ours." Chris adjusted the controls, sending their peaceful greeting message at full power. The Goliath's massive communication arrays lit up with energy, broadcasting their message across every frequency they could generate. On the planet's surface, every electronic device within 1,000 kilometers of the shuttle's position suddenly flickered and went dark. Television screens went blank, communication networks failed, and even simple devices like electronic locks stopped working. The pulse of energy from the massive alien ship had overwhelmed their technology with its sheer power in the underground. Command center. All the lights went out at once. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, but half of their monitoring equipment remained dead. "They're jamming our communications," Zephanex said in horror. "This is it. They're preparing to attack." "Did you see that power surge?" Lixara asked, her voice trembling. "Their communication system is so powerful it knocked out our entire electronic grid. They're showing us how easily they could destroy our technology." Veltar slumped in his chair, feeling the weight of his entire civilization's survival on his shoulders. The aliens had just demonstrated that they could cripple his world's technology with a simple radio transmission. If they could do that accidentally, what could they do on purpose? Above them, Ambassador Stone's shuttle continued its peaceful descent toward the planet's surface. Steve Johnson had chosen a landing site near what appeared to be the largest city, hoping to make contact with the local government. He had no idea that millions of terrified aliens were hiding underground, convinced that his tiny shuttle was the first step in a planetary invasion. "Landing site confirmed," Steve reported to the Goliath. "No sign of hostile activity." Preparing to touch down and begin first contact procedures, the shuttle settled gently onto a wide plaza in the center of the city. Steve and Rachel put on their environmental suits and prepared to step out onto an alien world for the first time in human history. They had no way of knowing that every move they made was being watched by terrified aliens who were certain they were witnessing the beginning of the end of their civilization. Ambassador